Welcome to Frontline Unscripted. I'm your host, Sarah Nicastro. Today, we're going to be talking about prioritizing work-life balance. I'm excited to welcome to the podcast Fernando Ferreyra, who is Service Engineer for the Technical Solutions Center at QuidelOrtho. Fernando, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you, Sarah. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. This is the first time I'm doing this, so super excited.
Yeah. Well, you are our third frontline guest, and every one of you, it's been your first podcast. So you're in good company, and we're going to have ourselves a great conversation. So before we dive into our topic for the day, let's just talk a little bit about your story. So tell everyone whatever you'd like to share about yourself, your background, and your current role at QuidelOrtho.
Uh, sure. You mentioned, my name is Fernando Ferreyra. I'm originally from Argentina. I currently live in the Tampa area with my wife and, my two kids, my two daughters, who keeps, life pretty busy. So outside work, I'm always, into technology. I like AI. I love building computers, trying always new techs at home. And besides that, I like biking, rollerblading, and I like to do stuff outside. Anything that is, being outdoors. So professionally, I have been with QuidelOrtho for over 10 years, where I work as a service engineer in the second level support role. So this position, I provide technical support to the field and first level, which is the technical solution center team.
Mhm.
Um, so my role, I help fix complex issues with medical equipment. So instead of me going to the site, I just support them remotely. So when a field engineer or a technical support specialist runs into issue, they call me and I help them troubleshoot the issue so we can get the equipment back up and running.
Mhm.
So there are times where I need to travel. So if we are not able to fully resolve the issue, I get to go to the site. So a big part of the job is, making sure the issues are fixed in a timely manner, and so we don't, so patients don't get affected, so they
Mhm.
can run the blood work.
Yeah, great. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the how you got here. Okay, so let's talk about when you were young. What did you think you wanted to do or be, for your career?
So I always wanted to be a biochemist and, do stuff in the lab, work in the lab. So my parents, they helped me to get into technical high school in Argentina. And so the program was a little bit longer, but when I finished, I was able to get a degree in pharmacy and lab technician. So I could either work in the pharmacy as a pharmacy tech or as a lab technician, which was kind of cool. So that was great.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit more about your educational background. So you started in that technical high school in Argentina. What happened from there?
So when I came to United States, I had to basically I had to revalidate everything. I tried to see if I could do something, but because it was at a high school level, I couldn't do anything. So I had to start all over again. So I went to a community college. I got my medical laboratory scientist, medical laboratory technician associate degree. And then later on, I went for my bachelor's degree, which I got my medical laboratory scientist degree. And also, when I was in college, I took a Network Plus certification. Uh, I love computers, so I did it, for my own knowledge.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. And then what about so you once you completed your schooling, tell us about like your early career. Like how did you enter the workforce? What was kind of the beginning of your professional career?
So I started working when I got my medical lab technician degree. I started working in Hackensack, UNC, in around 2006. So it was a blood bank. So there I built my blood bank expertise. We used to do blood typing, the screens, antibody identification, transfusion reactions. So the main purpose was to make sure the patients will get the right blood products like platelets, plasma, cryoprecipitate, coagulation factors. And it was a very fast-paced environment, very busy and very fast-paced. So later on, I went to work into the United Nations, so as a medical lab technician there, and that was a great experience for me because just of course, United Nations is kind of cool to work at the United Nations, but also I was more like a generalist,
Hmm.
so I got to work at chemistry department. I did hematology, immunohematology, and coagulation staff, coag kind of thing. So working at the UN, it was a really great experience for me, not just because of the lab, but I got to meet so many people, famous people. I got to meet presidents from all over the world. Uh, so it really gave me the opportunity uh, to broaden my perspective of everything. And so also I had the opportunity to become more involved in the lab.
Hmm.
So at the time when my boss retired, so I took her position. So I have to get involved into, equipment maintenance, supply ordering, budget planning, all the stuff that you usually don't do in the lab. And one of the things that really it was nice. So since I deal with different companies, so I get to talk to a lot of field service engineers from different companies, and that's how I learned about the field and the field career path. And I used to, ask all sort of questions. How is your day to day? And that's how I learned, about field service engineer.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, a lot of the folks I've talked to, whether on, the regular unscripted podcast, so at like the senior leadership level or for frontline, when we talk about field service, it's and this is true for myself, it's not a career I would have known to name or to really consider. So it's interesting how people come about understanding what it is and what the opportunities are. And so, yeah, so you are working at the UN. You mentioned when your boss retired, you had more responsibility on the operational side, and so you're interacting with these different individuals and kind of see the reality of that career. So talk to us a little bit about then, you know, how you went from interacting with those people and learning about that career path to making the transition to becoming a field service engineer yourself.
Yeah, I mean, it was so different for me because, I went, so I transitioned to the field service engineers in 2015, and I went with, QuidelOrtho. So it was a major career shift for me because I went from being the lab user, working on the equipment, just using the equipment, to repairing it, to fixing it. So I had to learn a new set of skills, troubleshooting. Uh, I had to use a multimeter, which I never used a multimeter in my life, so I had to learn that. But to me, it was great. I was always good at fixing things. I was always good at fixing computers. So for me, it was a challenge experience, but at the same time, I enjoy every single moment. And one of the biggest advantages that I guess probably I took for granted that I had is that I was a lab user.
Hmm.
So, and I was always good with computers. So I understood how the lab equipment runs, how to interpret results, which it made me a better troubleshooter, and I grow within the company. So also, I connected well with customers because I used to be in the shoes, so
Hmm.
I knew how important it is whenever an equipment is not working and you're trying to have all the things and do all the things and your equipment doesn't work, you cannot report results. So it's tough. So that helped me connect well with customers. And so in 2016, I was assigned two key accounts when I was in the field. So I have LabCorp and BioReference. And
Mhm.
so in the beginning, when they gave it to me, I was like, oh my God, they're big accounts. They have a lot of equipment in there. But because of, my lab experience, I was able to overcome that, I guess. And I gained a lot of experience working in the lab. I built good relationship. I still talk to them. At least to one of them, I still, keep in touch. So because of that, my role involved in I have to travel a lot because now I'm the go-to person. So I got to travel with the United States. I went to so many states. I went to Mexico. I did a lot of high-level escalations. It was great. I really enjoy it. And when that happened, so I didn't have any kids. So it made it
Mhm.
easier for me to travel and have that experience. And so in 2018, I was promoted to senior field service engineer, which was really nice. And also, I received Ambassador Club Award 3 consecutive years for being the top performing field service engineer in the country. And so the Ambassador Club, I know many people don't know, it's a trip. So it's a
Mhm.
nice trip where everything is paid for, and it's a great reward. You get to hang out with the best of the best. So it was very nice
Yeah.
experience.
And I love that Quidel does that for, field service employees as well. We've had historically a number of conversations, on the podcast and at events and things talking about how, often sales roles are rewarded in that way, but we don't necessarily acknowledge top performers in service similarly. And so I think it's great that you had the opportunity to be recognized and to, win a trip to celebrate that and that sort of thing. I also like the points you made about the unique perspective you had coming into the field service engineer role because you were a customer previously, right? So you really understand at a deeper level, what the challenges are, what the needs are, and I'm sure, like you said, it gives you a basis for deep connection with the customers that you're now supporting. Um, so that's all really interesting. I think it's also interesting, your point about so managing those two key accounts. And, my understanding is you're doing that across all of the US and Mexico. And so traveling a lot, which, like you said, was great before you had children. And then, things things change a
Yeah.
bit when that happens. And we'll talk about that a little bit more as we go on. But before we transition to talking about your current role and how that's different, what did you like most about the field service engineer role?
So I still love the field. It's just, field engineer role, it's just a hands-on experience, fixing equipment. It was really rewarding. I love, for me, being able to walk into the lab and figure out what's going on and get the instrument back up and running. I was always good at fixing things. And I always say it like, sometimes, you don't just fix equipment, you got to fix the customer. And
Hmm.
sometimes you got to fix the customer first because you have a mad customer and, you want to fix the customer before you go into the equipment. But it's really nice. I love the experience. So also because I've been in their shoes, that made me understand, like I said before, the urgency and being able to speak the same lab language.
Hmm.
So I could easily communicate with them, and it was easy for them to communicate with me. And I still remember they always used to say, it's like, oh, I like you because, I can tell you the way it is, and because of the blood bank experience, helped me to troubleshoot better as well.
Yeah.
Um, the other thing I really love is I enjoy supporting my coworkers.
Hmm.
So when a coworker will be, having trouble and you get a call and you're able to help them, uh, that to me was very rewarding. So it's just both technically and helping other people.
Yeah.
It was great.
Yeah, I think the point you made about, fixing the customer before you fix the technical issue, I think, brings about the reality of when we talk about these frontline roles today, it really is a combination of the technical capabilities, but also those soft skills and those people skills.
Yep.
It's a huge part of the job. And I think if organizations don't not only understand that, I think most do understand it, not all put enough time, effort, resource into, training and continually improving and refining those skills for people. And it makes a huge difference in, how service is received by the customer. Because if you, show up and you're great with the relationship, but you can't fix the problem, that's
Yep.
an
It has
issue. But if you show up and can't connect with them in a way that reduces that friction and pressure and allows you to go fix the problem, that's also an issue. You really have to be good at both
to be, yeah,
aspects.
and I used to see different engineers. You have the engineers that go, they walk in, they don't even say hi, and they go straight to the
Mhm.
equipment. And then you have the old engineer, which is just talk, talk, chatty, chatty, and doesn't go into the equipment. So I think it's just a balance,
Yeah.
and you gotta know how to read people. What's appropriate. What do you do first?
Yeah. I was just chatting with someone yesterday who I'm hoping will come on this podcast as well. And she was saying that when she started in her first field service role, she was very shy. And so she, didn't connect on the level that ended up being really helpful to do the role well, because at first it was hard. She had a lot of really deep technical expertise and knowledge, but the instinct was just to go straight to that. She wasn't as comfortable on the people side, but she said once she practiced and got better at that, the whole experience was so much better because it's just a really important part of the job. So okay. Yeah, I think that that's really interesting. So the other thing you brought up about supporting your colleagues is another good point, because we've had different conversations about how that field service engineer or technician role, it can be kind of lonely, if you're traveling all the time and you're not in an office regularly or at all, and you're not connecting in person with your colleagues. And I think it's great that there are ways that among teams, technicians build camaraderie with one another, they build those support systems. But I think organizations, it's also something they need to be conscious of and, make an effort to find the right ways to create that team culture, even though it's more challenging with people that aren't, in the same place on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think it changes based on, I guess, your location.
Mhm.
There are some areas. So I used to live in New Jersey, so that's where I got my most of my experience. So we have a lot of engineers, but there are some remote areas where you might just have one, and
Mhm.
that person is always alone. So yeah,
Yeah.
I can see that.
Yeah. A few different times I've had a gentleman from Tetra Pak on, and they have done a lot of research over the last few years, and they've put a lot of effort into, employee engagement and satisfaction specifically within their field force. And one of the issues that they've been working really hard to address is when they did their initial research, they had a good percentage of frontline workers that basically said they feel closer to their customers than they do the company itself.
Huh?
Because when you have those relationships and you're spending time on site, and it's good. You want technicians to have that, but you also want them to feel connected to the company that they work for, and figuring out how to do that virtually, it's challenging, but I think it's definitely worthwhile. So, okay, tell us about then the transition from field service engineer into the technical solutions center, and what was how did that come about? What was appealing to you about taking on this role, um, as a next step?
Yeah. So transition, like everybody else, you're always afraid to go into another job when you love the job you're doing right now. I love everything about the field. So what I was really drawn to this role, it was uh, to me, it felt like a natural next step,
Hmm.
just because I used to already handle escalations. I used to get phone calls from field engineers who knew me, and I used to mentor new field service engineers. I used to use certain tools to troubleshooting, which we use in second level now. And also, I used to do service history reports. I assisted with business reviews. So I feel like everything what I was doing, it was like, basically preparing for my next step.
Hmm.
So moving into this role where the main focus um, was, it just, to me, it just makes sense. So, it was a no-brainer to move up, and also the benefit of, work-life balance. Now I
Hmm.
get to work from home, and so that was really appealing to me, and also the opportunity to continue growing and moving up, to my next step.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see how it almost gave you the opportunity to scale that fulfillment that came from supporting your colleagues and helping solve problems. You can do that now, in a broader
Absolutely.
way because that is your primary focus versus, having your own set of responsibilities that you're traveling to do, but then also contributing in that way when you can. Um, so talk about the aspects of this role that you really enjoy.
So what I really like about my current role is I love computers. So I know sometimes people are like, "Oh, how can you be sitting?" Me, I enjoy. I love data mining. I love looking at issues, putting everything together, putting the puzzles together, and trying to figure out, uh, what what really is wrong with with equipment or something that you're fixing. When an engineer have like a very tough time fixing an issue, and you're able to, I guess, together work and trying to figure out, put everything together. That's really, really rewarding to me to be able to assist somebody. So also, what I love about this role is it brings me back to my field experience days because. So if we are not able to fix the issue over the phone, okay, so remotely, I get to go to the site. So
Hmm.
I get to travel. So that brings me back to my field engineers days. So it's kind of like a nice balance
Yeah.
between remote support and field work. So I mean, the remote aspect, of course, is great. It gives you good life balance.
Hmm.
So my family is happy, and I'm able to to work from home, and it's just great benefits.
Yeah. How often do you travel now? I mean, from when we spoke, I got the sense it isn't super frequent. Is that accurate?
No,
Okay.
yeah, it's not that frequent. I guess it's on and off. I mean, my team, we have four people,
Hmm.
and sometimes we travel depends on our location, but
Hmm.
sometimes we try to kind of like make it fair for everybody. I'm like, all right,
Sure.
I travel, you travel next. It's not that much. I guess it depends case to case. There are some years where a lot of issues happen and we got to travel. Um, Last year, I think probably I traveled 2 or 3 times, which is,
Yeah, that's not much at
it's
all.
it's not bad.
Yeah.
But to me, it's just like, when I get to travel, I get excited because I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to this account. I get to be in
Yeah.
front of the customer and,
Which
you
is
know,
what I was kind of wondering, Fernando, is like, we're going to talk more about one of the primary benefits, but we'll set that aside for now. Like, what I was wondering is, do you miss more of those, direct to customer interactions? And do you miss the travel? Or do you feel like you get enough of that in those experiences that it's fine?
I, I, I love to travel. I guess it's just like the balance I have now. So
Yeah.
I get to travel. I mean, traveling all the time is not fun. I mean,
No.
anybody can say, the beginning is fun if you've never done it. I just like the balance that I have now
Hmm.
that I love working from home. Especially because, my family, I'm there for my kids. My kids come from school and they get to see me all the time.
Hmm.
That's something that, I wouldn't want to change it. But also sometimes, I miss being in front of the instruments of, being with the customers, but I get to do that.
Hmm.
So, and, QuidelOrtho is very supportive of, if I decided, hey, I want to go to the field a little bit just to get exposure, I always get the, yes answer.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. So let's come back to this big topic of work-life balance. So a couple things I'm curious about is, and we may have talked about this in our initial chat, but I don't remember. So how did the timing of the transition from the field role to this role, how did that align with having a family?
So, I already, when I transitioned to this role, my two kids were little. I
Hmm.
mean, I think probably at the time, I think it was 5 and 2 or 5. Yeah, they were little
Yeah.
when I fully transitioned. So at the time, it happened during COVID. So at the time, my wife wasn't working, so she was staying home. So it made it easier for that transition. It was tough because I got used to being in the field all the time, going
Hmm.
and now sitting in the computer for the first few weeks, I was like, oh my God, but now, I love it. It's very
Yeah.
nice that.
It is a big transition though, I mean, even if you appreciate it and you feel like it's the right fit, it's still a big change to go from, almost always traveling to rarely or
Oh, yeah.
infrequently traveling.
Yeah. And
But
also, yeah, it also helped. So my wife, I mean, I was already in this position, but my wife decided to go back to school, so she
Mhm.
finished her master's degree, and she became a nurse practitioner. So now that I'm working home, so it's easier for her. She's able to go back into her career. So technically, kind of like my wife now, I'm helping her build her career, which
Mhm.
before she helped me build my career when I had to travel all the time and she was home for the kids.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like we're taking turns to help each
Yeah.
other out.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think, it's just a really interesting kind of, real world case study that you two have going on of, for me, I mean, I have two children as well. I have two boys, they're 9 and 10. And when they were young, I was in a job where I traveled some, but more importantly, it was just a very, very rigid culture. And I was expected to be in the office every day from 7:30 to 5. And there was just not a lot of flexibility. And it just, it it made it really hard to show up in both ways the way that I not only wanted but knew I could. And I think that when you're in these different seasons of life, you need to find working conditions that suit what you like to do, but also how you need to show up for your family. And the thing that I liked about, your story and your wife's story is I think it's really important, culturally to think about the importance of work-life balance and flexibility as a family unit because often we end up having this conversation related to women, just assuming that they're the ones that might need roles where they can work from home or have the
Yeah.
more flexible schedules. But that is faulty thinking. And your scenario is a good example of no, actually, she did that at a point, and now she's in a career that she can't do remotely, that she is with patients, and you've taken a role that allows you the flexibility to manage some more of the household, get the kids off to school, be there when they get home type of things. And I like that because we need more examples that don't just look the way people sometimes assume in their minds. So I think it's interesting. And in field service, relating this back to our primary audience of like the business leaders, the era of technicians coming into these roles where they are traveling constantly and then just staying in those roles for 20 or 30 years, it's not realistic anymore. So we need to be thinking about how, we create a different sort of pipeline and funnel through different aspects of, options for progression that fit different scenarios of what people might want or need. Because you would be in a really tough spot if that were, your only option and your wife wanted to be a nurse practitioner.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, I don't know if you have any other thoughts on that piece.
Yeah, yeah, no, the thoughts. I mean, my wife loves having mom because now I mean, she has enough stress, learning, starting a new career, and at least she doesn't have to think about that, nothing about the kids. Kids are fine, I'm here. If kids get sick, they can always stay here. I'm here. I can always, perform, do my job, and so it's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. Do you guys have family where you are?
Uh, no, we
Yeah.
have friends. My parents live in the other side they live in Florida, but they're like 4 hours away.
Hmm.
So most of the family are in the, Miami area.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we're in a similar situation, and I just think it's something that often from an employer perspective is not really thought about enough. From what I'm understanding from you, I mean, your children are of an age, you're not trying to juggle like full-time childcare while you're also working. It's something
Yeah,
as simple as like seeing them off and seeing them when they get home. But those are scenarios that can cause families a lot of stress if you don't have a support system. And, it can be just really hard to juggle all of that in a situation where both parents are working. So I think this whole topic of work-life balance or work-life blend and how to offer options and offer flexibility is just it's really increasingly important for people to be considering.
yeah, no, that's true.
Um, Now, as you look ahead, I mean, I know it's probably hard to say, but like, what do you envision for the future of your career? Like, would you want to pursue something different at some point? Do you feel like, I think one thing that's tough is like once you've worked from home and you have that flexibility, it's like really hard to consider going, at least
Yeah.
for me, to consider ever going back to something else. I don't know. What are your thoughts on like,
It's so true. Sometimes I joke with my wife. I'm like, I was like, I call her baby. So my baby, I'm like, it would be nice for me sometimes to go to the field. And she's like, no, you're not going to the field for now. Wait until the kids get bigger.
mm,
So it's so true. I mean, now I guess you got to put everything on the table. Now the work-life balance, it's so great. Maybe when my kids get a little bigger, now my kids are 7 and 11.
mm-hmm,
So my 11-year-old already acting like a teenager.
sure.
And so once I guess the kids get a little bigger, where they don't want to hang out with papa and mama anymore, probably I would like to move into something, keep moving up into a bigger role,
Yeah.
and keep growing within the company.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I gotta look for when the time is right, because I don't want to do things halfway. I just want to, if I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna do it, and I'm gonna do it with everything I can.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Yeah.
guess I gotta wait when my kids get a little bigger.
Yeah. Well, it's great that right now you feel like you have a good fit, you enjoy the work you do, and you're
Yeah,
happy. And I think, again, from a leadership perspective, it's so important for leaders to kind of understand within their team, what do people value and what do they want? Because there are these themes that are generally true and applicable, right? But at the end of the day, it's a very individual thing, right? Like you might have someone in your same role at Quidel that is at a different point in their life where they are ready for progression. And if they don't have that option, they're going to grow frustrated. Where you're saying right now, I value this flexibility a lot, and this is what's right for me for the, near
at the
term
moment.
future. And as a leader, knowing where everyone's at is so important to help you kind of figure out, how to retain the great people that you have. So yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
it's been tough. I can see, I mean, I watch your the two podcasts, and I relate to some stuff where the new generation, um, they just they just move to other positions, and they
Hmm.
come get experience and move. It's just crazy.
Yeah.
When I came to the field, most of my coworkers, they've been in the company for 20, 30 years. I was the youngest, and it was nice to see people being in that company for so many years, and now it's just different. I think
Yeah.
different generation.
Yeah, it is definitely different. But I think, and I think that's where the mindset of the company has to change because it isn't going to be realistic to have that same expectation. So rather than think about how do we retain these individuals in this specific role, longer than what they're going to be willing to do. It's how do we retain them within the organization? How do we keep the knowledge and the experience here by giving different paths of progression, which then means that like that cycle of bringing in new talent, has to be more continuous because people aren't just going to stay in that initial role as long. So, I mean, it's a tricky thing for folks to navigate, but yeah, it's just what was working, 5, 10, 15 years ago is just it's a different playbook.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you, you mentioned that you're really into computers and technology. Obviously, technology in service and AI in particular is a huge topic today, especially related to how it might impact jobs. So, what are your thoughts on the role of AI in, the future of service?
So to me, I think AI is really cool and exciting. I use it all the time,
Hmm.
and my wife uses it for work too. So we always talking about AI and different things. So I think engineers, at least within QuidelOrtho, we using AI, but we're using it for searching parts, look at procedures, answer some repair related questions. So it saves a lot of time, and it
Hmm.
makes the day and day go more efficient. So at the same time, at least for the field, I don't think AI is gonna replace the field. AI is not perfect yet.
Hmm.
It doesn't always understand the full context, especially when you use certain language about a repair or a service situation. I feel like it's not there yet.
Hmm.
So, and I don't think it will replace the human side of service. Customers still want to talk to somebody, an engineer to come to the site, and I think we still want the human connection. So
Hmm.
I think for service, it's not there yet. Maybe for other professions, might. It's just uh, I mean that's what I think.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. I think, the ways you're talking about how it takes inefficiency out of the day-to-day work is really smart, but I also agree that, you know, I think I've had people tell me time and time again, service is a people business, and I just don't think that that part, will change. Um, if you were to offer a young person advice or words of wisdom on considering field service or service as a potential career path, what would you share with them?
So I would, if I would offer to myself, I would say, Fernando, you should have started sooner, but I guess at the time I didn't know. So I can honestly say that it's a great career path. If you like fixing and solving problems, you're always learning. To me, there is nothing better than fix an instrument and you look like a hero in front of the customers. You
Hmm.
come in and sometimes it's easy stuff and every day is different. Some days are tough. Some other days are not that great. Um, you don't get to see your boss every day, which is
Hmm.
nice because you're always in the field. So my biggest advice will be, if you go into this career path, never stop learning. Always learn from the people around you. take every opportunity to grow and just keep building your experience. And that is something that I want to share. It's a quote that it really touched me. So I just want to give you a little brief story about the quote. So when I used to work in Hackensack, I would go and I had to wait to clock in. So I will always go early and I had to wait. So, and right on top, it used to be this quote by Charles Swindoll that it says, life is 10% what happened to you and 90% how you react to it. And every time I read it and just stuck with me. So I always tell my kids, I'm like, you gotta always do things with a smile. Sometimes things happen in life you cannot control, uh, but you can control how you react to it,
Hmm.
and always be positive, and it makes a big difference. And it's worked out for me. My whole
Yeah.
career, it just I live by it. Uh, you
Yeah.
know,
And that stuck with
so
you, like what
yeah,
a
yeah,
thing to like see and think about every morning before you,
yeah.
get into it. Yeah. That's really good. What about if I asked you like what thoughts or perspective would you want to share within to service leadership about, what they should be keeping in mind about frontline roles and their teams?
So I would like to share. So your top engineers or your top performance are the ones that makes the big difference in your team. So they keep the team strong. They raise the level of service and play a big role in customer satisfaction. So when you take care of them, it shows everywhere, and I see it through the field, and I still communicate with the field, and I can see certain people that it keeps the team together, and it's just one person, and that person keeps the team together, work together, and it's just crazy. Just one person can make
Hmm.
such a huge difference.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. And we need to, take good care of those people so that they keep taking good care of everyone else.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Fernando. Is there any other thoughts before we
Um,
finish?
I can, for whoever's listening, always try to be better than you were yesterday. Never compare yourself to anybody else. Always try to be better than you were, yesterday, and never stop learning and improving yourself.
I love it. Yeah, words to live by. Thank you
Yeah,
so much. I really appreciate you coming on
yeah,
and sharing your story with us.
yeah. Thank you for having me.
Yep. You can find more by visiting the home of Frontline Unscripted at futureoffieldservice.com. The podcast is published in partnership with IFS. You can learn more at ifs.ai. As always, thank you for listening.